Chapter 1. The Bride on the Highway. A long deserted stretch of highway between Semarang and Solo, known among truck drivers as Jalur Tiga Putu, the White Lane. Locals say it's cursed, drivers say it's haunted. Denny, a long-haul trucker, was making a late-night cargo run. It was past 2:30 a.m. when he saw her, a woman in a white wedding dress, standing by the roadside, veil covering her face. She didn't wave, she didn't speak. She just stood there under the flickering yellow street lamp. As he drove past, he muttered, "Another ghost story for the road." Then he checked his side mirror. She was sitting in his truck bed. In Indonesia, old truckers have a rule. If you see something in the mirror, don't look again, especially if it's wearing a veil. Denny forgot that rule. He looked and saw her face, gray, stitched, eyes hollow, blood soaking the veil. Suddenly, his steering wheel locked, his radio screeched static. From the back, he heard a voice, "Where's my groom?" Then something knocked from inside his cabin, from the passenger seat. Legend says the woman was once a bride named Sari, killed in a crash on her wedding day. Only her body was found, burned, still in the veil. The groom was never recovered. Now she waits on the highway, still dressed as a bride, hitchhiking back to her wedding. Dini's truck was found crashed into a rice field. Cabin destroyed, Dini missing. The only thing left behind, a blood-soaked wedding veil caught in the cracked rearview mirror. Later, other drivers who passed that same stretch claimed, "I saw a bride in the back of my truck, but when I looked again, she was in the front seat, and her veil was wet, not from rain, but from something breathing underneath." Chapter 2. The Child of the Soul Stone. In Balinese folklore, there exists a forbidden object known as the Bata Pemangil, the soul-calling stone. It is said that, if used correctly, the spirit of a dead loved one can be called back, but it never returns alone. After a sudden fever took the life of their only son Wira, a couple named Komang and Ayu were inconsolable. He was only 6. Desperate and hollowed by grief, Ayu sought the help of a Balian Haidam, a dark Balinese priest skilled in black rituals. He gave her a black, smooth, cold stone and said, "This is a Beta Pemangil. Wrap it in Wira's old clothes. Place it in his bed. Speak his name 7 times. And never ever look under the blanket if he answers." That night, Ayu did as instructed. She placed the stone in Wira's bed, wrapped it in his blue dinosaur pajamas, and whispered his name. "Wira, Wira, 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 Wira." Nothing happened until midnight. She heard light footsteps in the hallway, tiny hands knocking on the door. "Mama." Ayu opened the door. No one was there, but the blanket on Wira's bed was moving, ever so slightly. By the second night, the soul stone had grown noticeably heavier. Komang tried to lift it. It now felt like a full child. They started hearing things. The sound of toys moving in the night, Wira's favorite music box playing on its own, wet footprints leading from the bed to the kitchen. When Komang checked the CCTV, he saw a small figure running past the hallway. But when he paused the video, the child had no eyes. Its face looked stretched and wet, like it had no skin. Ayu began to dream of Wira every night. He stood in the corner, whispering, "It's cold inside the stone, Mama. I want to feel warm again. I want skin." On the 6th night, Ayu woke up with bruises on her arms, the shape of small hands. She ran to Wira's old room. The bed was soaked in something thick and red. The stone was cracked open like an egg, empty inside. Komang and Ayu went missing on the 7th night. When police arrived, the house was abandoned, except for a child sitting quietly on the floor, wrapped in Wira's pajamas. But when they asked the boy his name, he said nothing, just smiled, with a face that looked stitched together. The investigators later found 7 little stones placed in a circle on the kitchen floor and a note scratched into the wall. Cold spirits need warm bodies. Don't answer when they knock. Chapter 3. The Child on the Beach, a Bali Haunting. In June 2018, a German couple, Lucas and Ava, were vacationing in Bali. On their last evening, they took a walk along Sonar Beach just before sunset. They saw a little boy around 6 years old building sandcastles alone near the shoreline. He wore a faded green shirt, had no shoes, and smiled at them shyly. Eva offered him a bottle of water. The boy nodded but didn't speak. He kept playing even as the tide began to rise. Feeling concerned, Lucas approached a local beach vendor to ask where the boy's parents were. The vendor looked confused. "What boy?" Lucas turned back and the child was gone. No footprints, no belongings. Just a half-built sandcastle by the shore. They asked around. An older vendor quietly said, "Every few weeks, someone sees that child. He drowned here years ago. They say he likes foreigners. Follows them. Sometimes they take him back to their hotel." That night, Eva swore she heard bare feet running across their hotel balcony. When Lucas opened the curtains, no one was there, just small wet footprints leading to their locked balcony door. They checked out early the next morning. Chapter 4. The Corpse Oil That Wouldn't Burn. In some parts of Indonesia, it is believed that corpse oil, minyak mayat, can be extracted from a freshly dead body and used in black magic to gain wealth, power, or obedience. But it must be properly burned during the ritual. If not, the spirit of the corpse may remain. Angry. One night, he visited a hidden Dukin, a black magic practitioner, in the jungle. The Dukin agreed to help, but warned, "The corpse must be fresh. The oil must burn until there is no smoke. If not, it will follow you." Pakwordi didn't care. They dug up the body of a drowned woman buried only 3 hours before. Her skin was pale, her mouth was still open. The Dukin inserted a straw into her nose, set a bowl underneath her head, and chanted. Slowly, thick yellowish oil dripped out. That was the corpse oil. Pakwordi took the bottle home, lit a flame beneath it, and began the wealth ritual. But the flame sputtered, the oil hissed, and then it stopped without burning fully. He ignored it. The next morning, he found money in his rice field. He smiled. 3 days later, strange things happened. His dog went missing, found later drowned in a rice bucket. Black forms began crawling out of his mattress. The oil bottle started sweating, even though it was sealed. One night, he heard someone licking the glass from the inside. He dropped the bottle. It didn't break, but it throbbed. That night, Pakwordi woke up to find muddy footprints in his kitchen, leading to the oil bottle. The oil had vanished, but in the corner, something stood dripping wet, the woman's corpse. Hair tangled with leaves, skin bloated and split, her mouth still open. Her eyes rolled backward. She whispered, "You didn't burn me." He ran, but every time he passed a mirror, he saw her walking closer. Every time he blinked, she got nearer. Days later, villagers found Pakwordi's home empty. No blood. No struggle. Only the corpse oil bottle sat on the table. Inside, a new substance swirled, not yellow, but red. Almost like fresh fat. Taped to the bottle was a note in Pakwordi's handwriting. "She's inside, but not alone. If you light the flame again, she come out hungry." They sealed the house, but some nights, you can still hear licking coming from the bottle. Chapter 5. The Curse of Kayulin Village. Deep in the hills of central Java, hidden behind thick jungle, lies a remote village called Kayulin. Life there is quiet and peaceful, but every villager knows one rule. After sunset, never go near the old banyan tree. No one talks about why. No one dares to question it. until one day an outsider came. A traveling photographer named Daniel visited Kayulin during the ghost month. He was curious about the village's culture and landscapes. When he heard about the mysterious banyan tree, he smirked. A haunted tree. Sounds like a perfect shot. That evening, just before sunset, Daniel grabbed his camera and walked deep into the forest behind the village. There it stood, an ancient banyan tree, towering and twisted, its roots like snakes and its branches drooping low as if whispering. He aimed his lens and took a picture. The moment he pressed the shutter, the wind stopped. Birds fell silent. The air turned thick and cold. Daniel checked the photo on his screen. The tree was there, but so was a woman in white standing at its base. Her face was blurred, her hair long and black, covering most of her body. He hadn't seen her before. That night, in the wooden hut he rented, Daniel heard a faint voice at the window. Kimbalikan Fotonia. Startled, he opened the window. No one was there. Far in the dark, the banyan tree swayed gently, though there was no wind. The next few days, things got worse. Daniel developed a fever. He had vivid nightmares of a woman standing at his bed. His camera stopped working. Worse, some of the village elders began coughing blood. A strange sickness was spreading. Then the village head, a wrinkled old man with glassy eyes, came to him and whispered, "You photographed her tree. She never allows her image to be taken." That night, Daniel followed the village head to the edge of the jungle. They lit a small fire. The village elder handed Daniel a flower offering and a stick of incense. "Burn the photo, ask her to forgive." As the flame touched the printed photo, a piercing scream came from the fire, a woman's voice, sharp and inhuman. But the elder told Daniel, "Don't look back." Daniel froze in place. At sunrise, Daniel woke up to find his camera missing. On the wooden floor of his hut, 3 words were scrawled in red. Perji, Jangan Kembali. He did exactly that. To this day, no one knows where that photo went. Some say it still exists online. Others say those who see the woman's face in the picture never sleep the same again. Chapter 6. The Curse of the Crying Cave. They say it's haunted by the soul of a woman who once served as a midwife. One rainy night, she lost a baby during birth, and the villagers, blaming her, accused her of burying it alive. Mad with grief, she disappeared into the jungle and was never seen again. Soon after, the crying began. Every night from the cave. Raka, a curious university student from Jakarta, had been researching ancient Indonesian ghost stories. He heard about the village and its legend and thought, "A crying ghost? Sounds like great content." So he and his friend Andy made the trip. Locals warned them, begged them not to go near the cave at night, but they didn't listen. They stepped inside with flashlights. And then the sound, "Anakku, di mana kau?" "My child, where are you?" The crying echoed off the walls, and he panicked and ran. Raka stayed, heart pounding, drawn deeper by the sound. "Whoever takes my child, I will take their life." Raka returned to the village. Andy never did. He tried to act normal, but strange things started happening. At night, he dreamed of holding a cold, wet baby. His mirror fogged with handprints from the inside. He woke with muddy footprints on his bed. Then he got a call. Police had found Andy's phone inside the cave. The last video was blurry, screaming, Andy being dragged into the darkness. Raka fled back to Jakarta. He deleted all his recordings, but the crying never stopped. At 2 a.m. every night, he heard her. One day, his neighbors called the police. They hadn't seen him for days. When officers entered, they found the apartment empty, except for a single Polaroid photo on the floor. It showed Raka, eyes completely black, holding a baby in his arms. Standing behind him, a woman in a torn white veil, her face hollow and skin like cracked clay. If you hear a baby crying in the jungle after dark, don't follow the sound. It's not a baby dot, it's the dead midwife looking for one. And if she thinks you've taken hers, she take you instead. Chapter 7. The Dried Baby. In the outskirts of Yogyakarta, a young woman named Dewey struggled to make ends meet. She sold herbal drinks in the morning, cleaned houses in the afternoon, and still couldn't afford her sick mother's medicine. One day, a customer, a strange woman with yellowed eyes, pulled her aside. "If you really want money, go to the cemetery in Gunung. Dig near the tree with 3 branches. You'll find what you need." Desperate and skeptical, Dewey went that night. She found a jar wrapped in red cloth, buried under the dirt. Inside was something small, shriveled, and human-like, no bigger than a baby's hand. She brought it home. That night, she dreamed of a crying baby wrapped in banana leaves, whispering, "Mac, bury aku dera." She woke in sweat, her palm bleeding from a scratch she didn't remember getting. The next day, Dewey made an offering: chicken blood, rose water, and incense. She whispered, "Take care of me. I will take care of you." From that moment, her life changed. Men suddenly came offering business deals. Customers lined up for her jamu like never before. Her mother's illness vanished. Doctors called it a miracle. Dewey began calling the thing Si Kaisel, little one. She kept it in a wooden box with offerings of milk and coins. But soon her house began to smell like wet soil and rotting flesh. Sometimes crying dot, and then came the flies. Hundreds in her room around the box. But when she opened it, the creature inside smiled. Its skin was darker now, its tiny mouth twitching. Sometimes she saw it move when she wasn't looking. She tried to stop feeding it. That night, her mother coughed blood and collapsed. Dewey rushed to the box. The thing was sitting up. It whispered in a wet, hoarse voice, "Aku lapar. Selamanya lapar." Panicked, Dewey returned to the cemetery to bury it again. She left the jar, covered it in soil, and ran without looking back. That night, she slept soundly for the first time in weeks, until she woke at 3 a.m. and saw her door wide open. She turned her head, and there, on the floor, was the jar, cracked open. The creature was crawling toward her, dragging its stiff limbs, smiling with rotted gums. In Yogyakarta, they say a woman still walks the night, barefoot and crying, her arms cradling something small in a blood-stained cloth. They say if you hear tapping at your window after midnight, don't answer it, or you might be the next to carry the bayi carrying. Chapter 8. The Kuntilanak of Torch Hill. 3 years ago, a group of 5 university students from Yogyakarta planned a weekend night hike to Torch Hill. Their leader, Ramit, was a photography major obsessed with capturing real paranormal images for his final project. He had heard rumors that the Kuntilanak had been seen there. They arrived around 7 p.m. and began their ascent. The forest was silent and dark, lit only by their flashlights and phones. About an hour in, they suddenly heard it. A baby's cry. It was faint at first, then closer, sharper. Who the hell brings a baby up a mountain? One of them whispered. Ramit, instead of being afraid, grew excited. He began taking photos, filming everything. But soon something changed. The path twisted strangely. They kept circling back to the same old tree, no matter which direction they took. That's when they saw her. A woman in a flowing white dress, standing motionless beneath the tree, her back to them. Her feet hovered just above the ground. Ramit raised his camera and snapped several photos in rapid succession. Suddenly, the woman turned. Her face was pale and rotten, eyes like empty holes, mouth torn wide from cheek to cheek, and she laughed, loud and shrill. Ha ha ha. The group panicked. 4 of them ran screaming down the hill. But Ramit never came back. Days later, the search team found Ramit's camera beneath the tree. The memory card had been damaged, except for one image, a blurry close-up of a woman in white, grinning directly into the lens. Ramate's body was never found. Of the 4 survivors, 1 was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. 2 transferred universities, and the last became a devout Muslim, never speaking of that night again. To this day, locals say if you pass by Torch Hill on a new moon, you might still hear a woman's laughter echoing through the forest. If you hear her laugh, it's already too late. She's standing right behind you. Chapter 9. The Shroud Ritual. Nadia was a struggling young woman. Despite working hard in the city, her debts kept piling up. One day, she returned to her grandmother's village and sought help from a dukin, a traditional Indonesian shaman. The dukin gave her an offer. If you want wealth, bring me a kain kafan, the burial shroud of a freshly buried body, one whose fit bindings were never untied. She bribed a hospital mortuary worker. That night, Nadia stole a white shroud from a young suicide victim whose feet were still tied. She followed the ritual, hung the shroud from a wooden beam, lit 7 black candles, whispered the name of the deceased backward. For 7 nights, the dukin warned, never look beneath the cloth, never speak its name, never answer if it calls you. That night, her room grew icy cold. She heard a slow dragging sound like cloth sliding across the floor. Night 2. She dreamed she was being wrapped tightly, unable to breathe. She woke up with red rope marks on her ankles. Night 3. She found muddy footprints from the door to her bed. They stopped at her pillow. Night 4. Neighbors claimed they saw someone hopping in her yard, bound, wearing white. Nadia said nothing, but the shroud had grown longer and darker. On the 7th night, Nadia lost control. Driven by curiosity, dread, and the promise of wealth, she tore the curtain down. What she saw inside was not empty. It was a corpse, bound in a burial position, arms stuck to its sides, eyes wide open, lips sewn shut. Its entire body was wrapped, but it was twitching, trying to hop toward her dot. Then it blinked, and Nadia screamed as the lights blew out. She disappeared that night. Neighbors reported loud banging from her house, thumping, hopping, screeching cloth. When police broke in, they found no one, only the shroud, now nailed to the ceiling, forming the shape of a person struggling inside. Bloodstains marked handprints, toes, a face. A week later, a little boy saw a woman standing at the alley's end. She was jumping like a bunny, he said, but her feet were tied with cloth, and her face had no eyes. Chapter 10. The Vanishing of Rawajini. Years ago, in a small town near Bandung, a young bride named Ayu was found murdered the night before her wedding. Her body was discovered in her white dress, her veil soaked in blood. Her family, grief-stricken and deeply traditional, decided to proceed with a forbidden ritual, a ghost wedding to complete the marriage in the spirit world. Ayu was buried in her bridal gown, makeup still fresh, with a red silk ribbon tied around her hands to bind her soul to her fiancés. Her groom, however, never showed up. 10 years later, the mansion where the wedding was supposed to happen had been turned into a wedding photography studio. Brides from all over came to take dreamy photos among antique mirrors, Gothic archways, and vintage decor. The staff said it was just a replica until one day it wasn't. Lena, a 24-year-old bride-to-be, booked a photo session at the studio. As she tried on a vintage lace veil, she remarked, "It smells old." The photographer said nothing. Later, Lena opened the prop coffin out of curiosity. Inside was a human-sized doll, dressed in a bridal gown nearly identical to hers. Only it wasn't a doll. Its skin was pale yellow. Its hands were bound by a red silk ribbon. And when Lena leaned closer, the bride opened her eyes. Lena fainted. When she woke up, she was in her own apartment, but her veil was gone. That night, she began dreaming of standing in front of a mirror, dressed in Aya's exact gown, her own face blurred, her hands tied in red. In every reflection, windows, mirrors, phones, Ayu stood behind her, closer every night. And then Lena stopped appearing in mirrors altogether. A few days later, the studio tried to reach Lena, but she had disappeared. They checked the security footage. At 3:17 m, the prop coffin in the studio was seen opening by itself. At 3:18, a woman in a veil walked out. She didn't leave through the door. She simply faded out of the frame. The coffin is sealed now, but sometimes when new brides come to try on gowns, they complain, "Why do I feel like someone is watching from the coffin?" No one answers, but every once in a while, the red ribbon reappears, still tied.